it's Elise, and on today's episode, I'm going to be showing you how to create 5 amazing frosting styles using your round piping tips. There are loads of ways to frost with round piping tips, and these are 5 of my favorites. So I'm going to show you all of these designs today, and I'm going to be using 3 different sized piping tips. I'm using a pastry tip or a thermo tip, which is quite a large plastic tip, and I'll leave details of my tip sizes down below, but any round piping tips will do. I've got disposable piping bags today and I've pre-filled them with those 3 tips. I have a lot of piping tips at home and I've got different coloured frostings. This one at the front here is a dual colour frosting and I'm going to be showing you how to do that later in the episode. I've also got a little bit of spare green frosting, which I'm going to be using on our little beehive cupcake, a marshmallow and a knife. Let's get started. The first style I'll show you today is the low smooth swirl, and we're going to be using our medium piping tip for this. So for this one, you want to remember not to put any weight downwards on the piping tip. Start at the outer edge of your cupcake inside the cupcake wrapper and lifting the piping tip slightly above where you're frosting. You want to come around in a first swirl, a second swirl, and then you'll see I pushed it in ever so slightly in the center before tapering off to a point. I'm going to show you that one again so you can see exactly how I go around the first layer, the second layer, and then the third, tapering off to a little point. This one's super versatile, and I guarantee once you master it, you're going to use this swirl all the time. Number 2 frosting style, the spiky peaks. I'm going to be using the same piping tip again, so that medium piping tip, and you're just going to come around the outer edge and squeeze gently while lifting the piping bag up. So as you lift, you're actually causing it to taper, and you want to try and get these roughly the same size. This looks great in any color, but if you do it in a pale pink or a yellow with little silver balls popped on top of each of the peaks, it's perfect for a princess party. It's a really unique frosting style. Number 3 is the adorable little beehive style. So it's not as versatile, but it's equally as gorgeous, and I'm going to be using my smaller piping tip for this. I'll leave the diameter of that in the description box below. So to begin with, I'm going to give it some green grass effect by using the back of my knife to scoop on some of that green frosting. Try not to let it get over the outer edges of the cupcake liner and keep it as flat as possible. While it's still wet, stick your little marshmallow on top, which is going to stop you having a massive mound of frosting. Then you want to take your piping tip, and we're just going to start at the very, very base. Essentially, you're ringing the bottom of that marshmallow, and make sure that you don't leave too much of a gap on that first bottom layer. And you just want to go around 1, 2, 3, and 4 before tapering into a nice little point. Once again, no downwards pressure on that piping bag. You're slightly lifting it so that you get that nice point and so that you don't squish down your little beehive. The little bees I made just using yellow jelly bellies and a black edible marker. Number 4, the one squeeze wonder. Looks really simple, but actually requires a little bit of skill. So with all of these, you need to make sure that your frosting is right at the end of your piping tip. And for the one squeeze wonder, we're going to do one big squeeze. I'm applying a tiny amount of downwards pressure, and then as I get about halfway up the mound, I start lifting the bag before pulling it very quickly away, and that gives me that beautiful, nice high point. Your frosting consistency has a lot to do with the outcome here, but you need to make sure your frosting is not too firm here or you're not going to get that nice point. One of my favorites, number 5, the multi-coloured swirl, which is also a nice high round tip swirl. So you want to take a clean piping bag and a large spoonful of your first colour, whatever that might be. Carefully place it in and try not to get it up on the opposite side of the piping bag. Take a similar sized spoonful of your second colour and you want to carefully sort of shove it down the piping bag so it's about level with that first colour. I'm using my fingers just to squeeze it off, and then I'm going to use my fingers just to gently pat them so the two kind of combine in the middle a little bit. Now you want to carefully push them. You can see I'm using my whole hand, and try to keep your 2 colours relatively even at the end of your piping tip. Push them all the way down until they peek out the ends of your piping tip, and you might want to do a test swirl in a bowl or on a piece of paper until you're sure that both colours are coming out. I start my swirl just inside the outer rim of the cupcake, starting with the first, the second, the third, and then a fourth, coming up to a point. I don't go all the way around to the outer edges here because otherwise it ends up being a ton of frosting, and there is nothing wrong with a ton of frosting. It really is up to you, but I like how tall and neat it looks when you kind of just leave that little gap around the outside edge of the cupcake. These are 5 of my favorite frosting styles, and some really cool ways that you can use your round piping tips for things other than just a straight old-fashioned round swirl. If you want to see more from me, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you want to see even more from me, make sure you follow me on Instagram As always, guys, thanks very much for tuning in to My Cupcake Addiction.